Hello, I'm Steve Harmon. Thanks for joining us this week. This week we're looking at our theme, the dynamic of transformational leadership. This is video number 4. And we're operating under the premise of transformational leadership seeks to create positive change in those who follow. Many years ago I learned about the 20-80 principle. When I heard John Maxwell relate this principle, I began applying it to my own ministry. And you know what? It works. The 20-80 principle is very important, so let me share this principle with you. I believe you will find it very helpful, as it did for me many years ago. You see, 20% of our priorities will give you 80% of your production if you spend time on your talents, money, energy, personnel, on the top 20% of your priorities. For instance, 20% of our time will produce 80% of the results. In our counseling, 20% of the counseling is taken up by 80% of our time. Products, 20% of the products bring in 80% of the profit. In our job, 20% of our work gives us 80% of our satisfaction. In our speech, 20% of the presentation produces 80% of the impact. And 20% of the people will give 80% of the money for donations. And in leadership, 20% of the people will make 80% of the decisions. And so in order to do this, you need to have a strategy that works. For instance, you need to determine which people are the top 20% of the producers. You need to spend 80% of your people time with the top 20%. You need to spend 80% of your leadership development money on the top 20%. Determine what 20% of the ministry gives 80% of the return, and train an assistant to do less effective work. Ask the top 20% to do on-the-job training for the next 20%. Here's the leadership principle. We teach what we know, we reproduce who we are. So when you identify the top 20%, you're identifying transformational leaders. They have a passion for the gospel. They have a passion for the unchurched. They love the church. They have a mission, to turn church members into disciples who make other disciples. They possess a desire for more than they can accomplish, to see a vision of what can be. They want it to fit into the leader's mission and salvation, and they're willing to trust and give permission. So next week we'll look at this transformational leader as we talk about the lead transformational leader. So I'll see you next time.